Alright, gang, welcome back for round 2 of the Vanilla Start series for Cities Skylines 2. Sorry if I sound a little stuffy. I'm been under the weather this week, but I think we can power through it. So, this time on we're going to the second map in the series that's included with Vanilla, which is the Barrier Island map. This is probably inspired by something like Manhattan, but we're definitely not going to get there today. This map, I've played on it once or twice, and it's not my fave, just because of the way the highway comes into it. It's very Cities Skylines 1 with the highway just coming in and terminating. Like, that's not how cities start, with a big giant ass bridge like that, but whatever. What I always do is look over the map, see where everything is, and here I'm just looking at the resources and how I want to lay things out, and the only resource we have to work with here is the whatchamacall? Fertile land. And because I don't like the way the highway comes in and just terminates, I'm gonna kind of continue it. It's not gonna be a highway to start out, but I'm gonna use the parallel road tool to extend it in a bit of a couplet system, and it'll work as a surface level street to start out with, and then it'll just fighting with the alignment snapping. It'll work as a surface level street for a good while at the beginning of your city, but then it also reserves room for like probably later on, if the city were to get way bigger, I would delete this whole couplet and raise it up as the highway and just continue the highway into however my city grows. But for now, I'm just going to make it this little couplet that terminates and just kind of gets deeper into the island. And then off of that, I'm just going to build some grids, just basic grids using the grid tool. So I always like to use the asymmetric road, and for the grid tool I like to just kind of go until a street just appears, because then I know that all the grids are mostly even. So I just go until they barely have a street disappear or appear, because it should have all the grids be fairly even, if that makes sense. I'm trying to work my way over to this fertile land here, because one of the first things I always like to do, like I was saying in the other video, or the first video in the series, was to, or is to, put down a farm, because these, the resource collection is really kind of one of your main money makers in the beginning of a city. So, don't forget about it, like I'm totally going to later on in this video. I get this farm down, the wheat, grain, whatever, farm, and then I almost go bankrupt later, but we'll get there when we get there. So for now, I'm just making this, leaving a little bit of room by the coast so we can have a back road into here. But a good starting little farm there that would, like in the future, if I were to grow this city, I would probably delete it eventually, but for now I'm going to use it as the basis for my road frame, like my main arterial going off to, we'll call it the south that way, and then I'm also going to put another road going off toward the north. And then just connect my couplet into it, so that eventually these roads can be kind of form the main skeleton of the town. And like I was saying, like later on, if the city were to keep growing, I would eventually delete this couplet, raise up the highway so that I could connect roads underneath it, and then where this roundabout is, I would make kind of an interchange, you know, like a 3-way branching off, or maybe 4-way, depending on how the road system grows in the future. But yeah, so don't be afraid to like plan things to just eventually be deleted, because that's how cities grow. And here we're just putting that road behind the farm because I am gonna kind of round off my industrial area over here. I'm gonna put in a little bit of a grid because, again, just thinking toward the future, I would likely eventually want to put something like the dairy farm or dairy house, whatever that kind of farming factory, the first factory is that you unlock. But there's still a lot more fertile land, so I do want to kind of save room to use that as well. So I always like to use the grid tool, but then delete kind of the edges of it and follow the terrain or natural geographic features, like how the bay comes in right there. So yeah, just following that, reserving room for another farm or something over there. And then here I'm going to switch these out to be one-way exit and entrance into this little grid area, just because it's connecting in both spots, and it's going to have industry traffic, which will eventually be more difficult to deal with, I would think, but right now it's not really. I'm just doing that little one-way entry and exit because those two intersections are quite close together off of a main road. And then just kind of rounding out the back area, because I am going to put a lot of industry here because that's the way the wind blows. And unfortunately, it doesn't blow hard enough anywhere in the starting tile for wind turbines. So that's unfortunate. I thought I was going to import power. Maybe I do import power for a little bit. But eventually I go with the coal power plant, which I don't think I've ever used, or maybe I did when I very first started playing, you know, like a year ago. And then over here I'm putting, I think, the water pumping, because that needs a road to go to it. So the water pumping station, and then over here I'm putting the sewage outlet pipe. Again, I'm planning on this whole area, and maybe even that little island, being like industry, so I would eventually want to put just the sewage treatment plant over there somewhere off in that direction, because again, that's the way the wind blows offshore, is that way. And then I'm going to add another grid over here just to be more residential space, because if I'm having the industry on the other side of the couplet, I'm going to have commercial over there too, but I can't have a ton of residential over there because the industry will need to use quite a bit of that space. So there we go, that's the initial starting layout. And I still need, oh no, I think I put everything down. Yeah, I got water in and out and hooked up power, so I'm just gonna upgrade this road because that's gonna be kind of a main collector through this little neighborhood back here. Just trying to get the grid to like even out, and I get it to right here, but then later on, because it's vanilla, it messes itself up again. And whatever, it is what it is. And I decided to go with the Japanese low residential. I hadn't really used that in mass yet, and I think it looks pretty cool, and I just wanted to see, you know, what it looked like, a lot of it. And then I'm using one of each type of commercial there, American, European, and Japanese, just to grow in some varied assets. And we'll just watch it all grow up a little bit here and see where our demand takes us. But first, as always, #1 development point goes to advanced road services. So you gotta go around and turn off all your stoplights, just to start with, when your traffic is young and you don't need, you know, you don't need stoplights. So just turning all those off. Any kind of 3-lane or more or larger road will generate a stoplight at every intersection. So the asymmetric roads, those 3-lane one-way roads, and I'm also removing the crosswalks in the main center part, leaving the north-south ones, but taking off, going the other way. They can cross back further into the neighborhoods if they need to cross the street that way. Eventually, you'd probably, I mean, like I was saying, you'd want to either raise up the highway or put pedestrian overpasses. I never get to the point of raising up the highway, but I would definitely do that in this kind of scenario, because then you could connect the grid underneath it and make it a lot more integrated and have some tall buildings right up against it. And like, if you ever look at Tokyo, all their freeways are raised up off the ground, and it just works really well. So yeah. Now what are we doing? At the milestone, I think you get row housing unlocked, the first milestone. Yeah. So I am just adding I added a parking lot street there. A street with angled parking. Unfortunately, the only ones that have it on one side are one-way streets, but it's not the end of the world. It is what it is. You can take a two-way street and just put like a wide sidewalk on the other side, but I didn't want to ruin my housing there. I wanted to retain as much zoning. My brain is not working. As much zoning as possible. So I did a one-way parking lot road, put some row houses on, and I'm not too bothered unless I'm doing a very like specifically built like apartment complex or something. I'm usually not bothered about the row houses not all growing in at the same depth, because it just gives it kind of a tiny bit of realism. I think that like if maybe they were all kind of 2 units deep at one point, and then as they grew up, they became, you know, people put backyards or extensions on the back of them, and so that's I like to let some 2-unit deep row houses grow in when I bulk zone just like this right here. I'm not too bothered by it because it gives variety, and variety is the spice of cities, isn't it? So yeah, just a little more zoning and waiting for that to grow in. I do put some residential only medium, or like row housing in medium, over on the commercial side, commercial and industrial side. You'll see those row houses that I did put down closer to the industry I eventually have to take out because the air pollution gets to them. I thought the wind was blowing a little stronger out to the water, but it's kind of blowing over more toward that island, and it doesn't blow away as strong as I thought it did. That's another thing with not having strong enough wind to do wind turbines. The air pollution kind of hangs over a little bit. It doesn't blow away as quickly. So I just put in a coal power plant there, connected it up so that we can start exporting some power. That's another thing that helps you in the beginning, is to export power, export excess stuff you have. If you're able to connect your water pipes outside, like a lot of user created maps will have water lines running underneath the road, so you can immediately connect up to either import or export your water immediately, and that makes it helps a lot with exporting for profit in the beginning. Here I'm just adding a medical clinic, and something I do on this specific map, like I did the first one and I was very careful with my budget the whole time, and then this time, I don't know if it's because I used the coal power plant and I'm just not used to having to budget around that. I just started putting services down like crazy. And another thing I do here pretty quickly is I'm gonna put down a crematorium next instead of a cemetery, and these are way more expensive to operate. So between that and the coal power plant, it's just, it was a lot more money going out than I'm used to dealing with. But that's fine. It was a good little challenge. And then I put down also an elementary school and then here a high school pretty immediately. I probably could have waited on the high school. I probably should have waited on the high school a little bit. You don't need it right off the bat. I like to have it just to, it takes a while for Sims to go through the system, but like, especially toward the beginning when you're growing population, people with that, you know, higher educated, whatever you want to call it, will come through, or like move in, sorry. So you don't need to educate them all yourself right at the beginning. But anyway, instead of using just like a normal parking lot for the high school, people don't really use extra parking that you put by high schools, but I just wanted to have it just for realism's sake. I put in a little one-way loop of parking lot roads, and I thought that was pretty cute. And then I'm gonna struggle here to put in a little roundabout at the corner, but I love stuff like this in my cities. Like, I don't always like to, like, even though I play with mods usually and I just anarchy stuff in, like, I probably would have just anarchied that in to work, or just made like a three-way intersection without a roundabout. But vanilla kind of forces you to work around this stuff, so I'm gonna do what I was just trying to do, just with a little more curvy roads, is to put in a little roundabout here, and I just think stuff like this like adds character, and it makes your streets and your grid and everything a little more interesting when you have to work around stuff like this. And yeah, and so here I'm just gonna put in a little crosswalk. I love these new roads. I love the way the crosswalks like spawn in, and you can see over there on the right there's a driveway, and so there's no parking spots in front of it. I just love these new parking roads. They're fantastic. I wish I'd thought to put more in the downtown before I started zoning, but whatever. I think I add parking lots or stuff later, because living in the US, there's one thing that we always have lots of, especially in small towns, or smaller cities, is just lots of surface parking. So just adding some more residential. We went up to the next milestone, so we got some proper medium density. Just trying to keep it kind of mixed up between European and American zoning there, and then I remember I can fix my taxes a little bit and try to start catching up with the money. I'm absolutely bleeding right now, but my budget for water was too low there. People were backing up with sewage water, so never good. And this time I decided to just put down a dump first thing. Usually I just kind of wait until like forever to put in waste management until my like my power plant or whatever is screaming for it, but there's not a lot of room here, and I didn't want to put it over by the farm and like in that main area, so I decided to just stick it here because I'll eventually move it or get the recycling center or something. Just the way this road plan is working out, I would probably put it down further, like beyond where the farm is, kind of toward the south end of the island. I would make like a big industrial port over there, and I'd put the garbage collection down there eventually. So I'm just using that spare corner because it's not really going to get used much in the future. Like when I were to upgrade to a proper freeway cutting through, I could use that space for an interchange or something. So yeah, just thinking ahead for things like that is always good. Or like how in real cities you use a landfill and then you cover it up and make it into a park or something. That'd be a really pretty waterfront park, kind of like the Golden Gate Bridge has a big visitor center and park by it. I think it's actually an old fort, but whatever. Over on this side, I am making a more structured kind of medium density community. It's just gonna be row homes, but I spaced it out so that they could all be 4 units deep. So you will see me deleting those 2 unit ones, and then around the edges I put just 3 unit deep ones. I don't know, in community, like in American apartment complexes, you always have like different like studios, 1 bedrooms and 2 bedrooms. So you have different sizes to accommodate. Usually more of the bigger ones to try and get more money, but they always tend to have some smaller units too. So in my apartment complexes, I always like to put smaller ones. So I'll do mostly big ones, and then I'll add 2 and 3 unit deep ones around the edges. And then just expanding on the low density residential over there, but I think I zoned that in with American waterfront housing, just to have a different look, because I grew up in the American Southwest, where the endless suburban sprawl just goes forever, but like different developers will just buy different tracts of land and build their houses, and so you have from above, you like in a plane, you can see big neighborhoods that just, oh, see there, I'm putting 2 unit deep ones, and then down the sides I'm putting 3 unit deep ones. But you'll notice the 4 unit deep ones in the middle, they have like little yards and stuff in the back. So anyway, housing tracts, especially in the American Southwest, where there's just land to be had. Like, I live in a Colorado city that's just sprawling, growing out into the plains endlessly, and it's just a bunch of tract housing that's built by different developers. So you have one neighborhood that looks like all 3 and 4 story houses, and then you have a neighborhood right next to it that's all like 5 and 6 story houses with bigger yards. So it's just, it looks kind of funny to have a bunch of houses that like look so similar and then like switch to a different kind, but it's actually pretty realistic. I don't know if I pulled up the unemployment yet. I don't look at it as much in this one as I did in my first series. I was like really trying to stay on top of it, because the city I was building before that, I got like way like 60% unemployment, and I didn't want to make that mistake again. So here I'm just kind of trying to stay on top of it. But I was just more aware of it, so I wasn't looking at it as much, I guess. I don't know if that makes sense. And then coming up to the big road here, I knew I wanted to make some sort of transition between this neighborhood. There was a fair amount of room for a couple more blocks of single family homes, but then I was kind of brainstorming. I'm going to zone in a few more single family home blocks, but I was like, I kind of want to save some room for some medium density housing, because if you look at the demand meter, that's what's growing in. So then I decided to come off of where this parking lot road is over here, and I'm just going to make a big old, and I'm lining it up with the arterial road up there to be parallel with that. And I'm going to make kind of like an apartment complex over here. This is where mods really come in, and being only on PC, like if there's a mod you get, make it plop the growables, because you can make things look exactly how you want by just plopping the buildings. Like, I would have been able to pick and choose ones that looked a lot more similar. I'm only using the European medium density, so they look similar enough, but yeah, plop the growables and anarchy to be able to put like 2 or 3 of them kind of merged together to make a bigger building out of like smaller ones, like proper apartment complex style is one of my favorite things to do, because there's apartments everywhere. Like I said, I live in like a medium-sized U.S. city, and there's just like there's single family homes, and like the neighborhood I live in, even, it's full of old houses, like 1 and 2 bedroom houses from the era of the railroad. And then right at the end of my street, I actually lived in it, there is a 1970s apartment building that's like, I think it's like 8 stories high. So it's very common, especially, and it's on one of the more main roads. It's kind of on the collector in my neighborhood. So another thing, this right here, adding landscaping using the brand new line tool, thank you very much, is a way to get experience points in the beginning. I'm trying to level up. Like, I'm so close to level 4. And when you start doing things like landscaping or shifting terrain around, that gives you experience points in the mind of the game. So there we go. We got to milestone number 4 because I was doing landscaping and stuff that I hadn't done up until that point. So that's always a good thing to remember. It's like, try to do the things you haven't done that you've unlocked if you're trying to get to the next milestone, like putting in parks or putting in whatever service you haven't decided to put in yet because you're trying to save money, but it'll give you the experience points you need to make it to the next level. Over there, I'm just adding, I think those are Japanese, maybe? Apartment buildings? Maybe not. I can't remember. I love the new Japanese. Yeah, I love the new Japanese buildings because those are the size of proper apartment buildings. Like, not all apartment buildings are 10 stories right off the bat. Like, most start out as 3 or 4 stories. And so I really appreciate the Japanese buildings for that. Over here, I decided to, I was going to continue that townhome neighborhood, but I think with level 4 we unlock low rent housing, which is higher density. So I decided to zone in one of the French assets there, and I was just trying to see if I can make a roundabout fit, but oh well, no anarchy, it is what it is. And then going back to the littler Japanese assets, I decided to make kind of another little apartment complex here, and you'll see me do in a minute is put in parking behind. Of course, alley roads don't have parking on them. Actually, is there a vanilla one that does now? I'm not sure. I know with mods with Road Builder, I've made a few alleys that have parking on them that I'd love to use a lot, but there I just use our new roads to make some parking behind the apartment complexes or buildings, whatever, in that complex. And here I'm like running out of room that I've made for industrial, and I finally remember, oh yeah, I should put in another farm over here. So I'm gonna throw down a vegetable farm. Because I have industry demand. It's the only demand I have, but like, I have started making a little bit of money, but shortly after this, you'll just see it making like a bunch of money because I'm exporting a lot of goods from my city. Like, up until this point, I was kind of struggling with money, and then I just started turning a profit, and then pretty soon after this, I'm just gonna be turning a pretty hefty profit. So yeah, don't forget about your silly resources, because that's how you make money in the early game. The resource chain is definitely broken for later game, but yeah. So just trying to squeeze in a little bit more industrial over here because that's the only demand I have, and I needed more jobs. But I still need chickens or livestock, and some cotton eventually, probably. But so I decided to put in a little livestock farm over here because I don't know, I just have this thing with putting farms right next to high schools, probably because of where I grew up in the mountains of California. It was like this weird farming valley. Like, if you look at a map of California, the whole center of it is farms. It's oh my gosh, I can't remember what they call it. I want to say the green belt, but that's not it. But that's where most of our like oranges, like all of our fruit and stuff comes from, the Central Valley of California. And I lived at the very, very southern end of that, kind of up in the mountains there. And we had sod farms and like strawberries and broccoli and things that needed a little bit cooler weather. were grown up there. Like, I would always drive home from school, or my mom would pick me up from school, and we would be driving home, and we'd stop at strawberry stands on the side of the road, or they would sell whatever fruit they had that, or vegetables that they had. But anyway, so my high school was in a farmland type environment, and I just grew up seeing, like, riding the bus through those fields of farms with legitimate produce. And then I'm just using this triangle over here to make another kind of apartment complex. I decided to go with slightly bigger buildings, just American style on this side. The other one was all European, so just a different style. I think the American buildings go more with those schools, which are, funnily enough, UK schools, but and then adding, because I'm putting more density over here, I'm adding these ways to get into the neighborhood on this side from this arterial, making this one get a little bit of use. Putting what are those called, asymmetric roads, and always remember to turn off your stoplights with asymmetric roads. You'll see it a little bit here, that there's a stoplight somewhere and it's like causing a traffic jam. And then in this spot, I wanted to put some commercial here, like, just because we're getting kind of far away from the commercial on the other side of town, and but I never really get the demand for it. But after putting in some residential houses here, I do have some office demand, which that's usually kind of a good thing. Like, right up the street from where I am is there's offices, and then there's commercial on the other side of, like, the parking lot of those offices, because offices are obviously quieter. And here I had enough of a profit going that I was like, oh yeah, I need to add the rest of my services in. I don't know, did I add a firehouse yet? I think I may have. Maybe not. And then, you know, as your profit grows, don't forget to turn up your budgets for all these things. It's definitely necessary to keep some of them turned down for a longer time. Like police and fire, you really don't need to turn those up for a long time. Like, wait until you're well into the green to do that. And then another big thing, if you're like struggling with demand, is to put in your parks, because people will move to cities that have, you know, higher ratings, more beauty, more leisure. So I always like kind of forget to put in parks, and until like after I unlock them, and after a while I'm like, why am I not having demand? I need demand, and it's usually that I haven't put parks everywhere. And then a dog park, that's not a dog park, I'll switch, there we go. A dog park, I always like to put dog parks next to apartment complexes, because that's a major plus for apartment living, is to have a dog park, instead of having to just walk your dog on the poor little patch of grass or tree. Here we go, here's the traffic jam. See on the right there, I forgot to take off the light, and so even though there's not a light in the middle street, it caused a backup having it just on the side street there, so everyone's trying to move into those apartments that I just built. Now here's something that, because I've never really used a coal power plant, I was like, oh no, I'm running out of electricity, what am I going to do? And I wanted to harness that water over there for a geothermal plant. That's usually what I go for, but it is $750,000, and I can't even get that much of a loan. And I was running out of power kind of imminently, so I decided to, I think I just like tried just turning up my budget a little bit for the time being, and that wasn't really enough for the immediate growth I needed. And I was hoping against hope that maybe the wind changed for some reason. So yeah, I turn up the power, the budget, and the power just really doesn't go up enough. Like, it's in the light green, but it won't be for very long. And yeah, I could just import some power for a while, but that, don't forget, is one of my main profit makers, is exporting the power. So I decide to just get a small loan and do another coal power plant. And then eventually, when the land is when I can buy more tiles and kind of relocate all this industry further down the island, I will you know, get a bigger power plant and kind of and get rid of those ones, which is, you know, also another kind of realistic thing. Like, I live in a very a kind of a mining town. It was originally, and we have coal stacks, like old defunct coal stacks around, just like in neighborhoods and stuff, or in the middle of parks, because there used to be power plants and different mining facilities and stuff all over the place. And so yeah, it is great in one of the recent detailers patches that we can use props from the industries to kind of do that. Like in a different city I just built, I use some of the what are they called? Not the featured buildings, whatever, you know what I mean, the special buildings that are free. I use some of those fancy condos. There's ones that look like old kind of warehouses, and then I put some industry props next to them to make it look like, you know, it was just old infrastructure that was left there. So yeah, power of props. Over here I'm going to struggle with the zoning. I'm making another kind of apartment complexy type area. Really it's just like a mid-density neighborhood. It's not really a complex in itself. But I needed more low rent housing, so I'm putting a few of those on the end over here, close to what will eventually be a major intersection. And then some more townhomes with bigger backyards this time over a little further over. And we're getting toward the end here. I just put in a telecom tower that I forgot I unlocked, and now I'm putting in a post office. These two things are very important to the well-being of your citizens. Like that little happy face tracker in the bottom right, that is what keeps people moving into your city. So unreliable like internet and mail service, really keep that bogged down. If so try to remember to put those in when you unlock them. Put in your, what are these things called? I'm going to keep calling them featured buildings as well. Those also contribute to your people's well-being, and just makes your population happier. And that's basically it. I'm making a really tidy profit now, so I'm gonna just turn up all my budgets that I can. Some I'm gonna leave kind of low, like fire and police. You don't need to turn up all the way for a while. But everything else, like education and healthcare and trash, I like to turn up to 100% as soon as I can healthily afford it. And then the last thing I'm going to do here is just check on my unemployment, which is under 5%, and that is pretty good for a starting city. So that's going to be it, really. Here is my little starting layout for Barrier Island. If you like this content and you want to see more, let me know in the comments, or if you want to throw me a coffee. Work's pretty slow right now. There's a link for that below as well. And I will see you next time. I think the next map is Corral Riches.